All right, so last week we continued our Unlocking Revelation seminar with more detailed topics. And last week we looked at the overview of the book of Revelation. That was our morning class. Today, the topic I call World History / Prophecy 101. Yes, history and prophecy. So we're going to spend a good amount of time in Daniel, to let you know. So there's two books, and we looked over this last week. I'm not going to read these verses again, but there's two books in particular, two prophetic books that we're told we should read and understand these. And one of them, Jesus tells us, is the words of the prophet Daniel. He tells us that in Matthew 24:15. And the other one, in Revelation, we are told to read, "Blessed is he who reads."
Yes.
And he who keeps, and so we should read and understand it. Go ahead.
So we should read those before the rest of the books?
No.
Okay.
It doesn't say it. No, actually, you probably should know some of the rest first, but.
Yeah. That's why I'm trying to read it like in order, kind of, because some of it says like, the next chapter tells about, how the other guy died in the previous chapter, or.
Yeah, and so you missed part of the story.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Revelation's the last book in the Bible for a reason.
Yeah.
Because it assumes you've read the rest, kind of.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I mean, the order's not the biggest deal. We're going to dive into some stuff, and you'll learn some of the background stories as we go.
Yeah.
But what I mean is that these two books in particular are pointed out, and they say, hey, you're blessed if you read these, and you should probably understand these. Yeah. So Daniel, Revelation. So a quick look at Revelation chapter 13, which is, I don't know if you guys can read that too well. You might have to follow along in your Bibles.
Yeah.
Revelation 13, I'm going to use the technology version
Even
here.
with glasses I can't.
Yeah. Revelation 13, and you guys feel free to stop me if you have questions. But that's the good thing about this classroom style one. So Revelation 13, verse 1 and 2. And I want you guys to notice, I'm going to show you a link between Revelation and Daniel. Maybe something that you've never noticed before. So Revelation 13, 1 and 2. I'll read that for us real quick.
Mm-hmm.
And I stood upon the sand of the sea. I want you to notice the sea there. I got a few words there in bold. Stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. I want you to notice that, 10 horns. Upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. The beast which I saw was like unto a leopard. I want you to notice that, a leopard. His feet were as the feet of a bear. Notice that, a bear. And his mouth is the mouth of a lion. Notice that as well, a lion. And the dragon gave his power, seat, and great authority. Okay, there's a lot there, but there's a couple things that I want to draw your attention to. So, just those 4 things that I pointed out, well, there was 5. There was the fact that the beast came out of the sea, right?
Yeah.
But then it says it had 10 horns, right?
Yeah.
You guys saw that? And this is in order. First thing it mentions is that it has 10 horns. And then it says it's like a leopard in some way, it's like a bear in some way, and it's like a lion. So 10 horns, leopard, bear, lion. Okay? Now, go to Daniel chapter 7. And we're going to see something interesting here. There's a link. Daniel chapter 7, verse 3 through 7. Now, I've kind of cut off some of the extra descriptions here just for the sake of time. We're going to go into this actually in more detail today. But just to kind of get the big picture, Daniel 7, verse 3 through 7. I'll read this kind of shortened version that I have. And 4 great beasts came up from the where? Sea. Already sounds familiar, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Diverse one from another. The first was like a what?
Lion.
A lion. It's interesting. And it describes the lion more, but just for the sake of time. And behold, another beast, a second like a bear. Again, another interesting thing. After this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard. Now this is starting to be too many things in common to be a coincidence, right? After this, in the night visions, after this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly, and it had how many horns? 10 horns. Okay, so now Daniel sees a lion, a bear, a leopard, and then a beast with 10 horns. And they all came out of where?
The sea.
The sea. Did that sound familiar? Did that sound similar to what we saw in Revelation?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like you were saying, and what we discussed at the beginning, Revelation kind of assumes that you've read the Old Testament.
Yeah.
And so when you're reading Revelation 13, He put all those similarities in there. There should be red flags, and you should be saying, hey, that sounds just like Daniel 7.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason God does that is so he says, look, if you want to understand this chapter, you need to understand this.
Yeah.
Right? And so there's links.
Right.
You know what else was interesting though? Did you guys notice that the order is opposite?
Yeah.
The other one had mentioned the 10 horns first, and
Yeah.
then a leopard, then a bear, then a lion, the exact opposite order.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go into what that means later on, but it's interesting,
But
right?
does each the lion, the bear, the 10 horns,
Uh-huh.
and the leopard, do they all symbolize something?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. We're going to go into that in detail. That's our topic today.
Yeah.
Is Daniel 7. Because basically we've looked at Revelation 13, but we haven't looked in detail in Daniel 7.
Yeah.
And so what I'm basically saying now is, okay, we looked at Revelation 13, let's backtrack now and look at where it quotes from, and let's understand that in depth. So we're going to spend time in Daniel today. That's really where we're going to be at the most part. So I mentioned last week, Revelation is 404 verses. Of that, 270 plus, almost 3/4 of the whole book of Revelation, is quotes or paraphrases from the Old Testament. So you need to understand what it's quoting if you want to understand it.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go back to Daniel and see what it's quoting. Now I want you to notice one more thing that we didn't mention before the first time we looked at this, Daniel 7, verse 3 through 7. It says that there's 4 great beasts. I didn't point that out before. In Revelation, it was just one beast, and it was a mix of all 4. But in Daniel, it's 4 beasts. Okay? And then it tells you what it means. Daniel chapter 7, this is what your question was. Daniel 7, verse 17. These great beasts, which are 4 kings, which shall arise out of the earth. And then verse 23, thus he said, the 4th beast shall be the 4th kingdom upon earth. So, a beast in prophecy is a king or a kingdom. Nowadays we would say a nation, right? Something like that, an empire, we use those kind of words. We don't really think in terms of kingdoms nowadays because there's not a lot of kings anymore, but it's the same idea, right? Country, it's country, okay? So 4 beasts symbolize 4 countries. That's where these 4 different, an artist tried to describe them there. Pretty good picture, I think. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go into the details of what all that stuff means here. So the idea is that a beast symbolizes a nation, and we use the same symbol today, the same idea at least. We use animals to symbolize countries, right?
Yeah.
So, bald eagle. Actually, we were just at the San Francisco Zoo yesterday.
Yeah?
Yeah, we took our god kids there and saw the animals, and we saw the bald eagle there.
Wow.
Yeah, and the Kalia, our goddaughter, that's the state bird, huh? You can't touch that, huh? That's the country bird, yeah. So a bald eagle symbolizes the country, right? It's a symbol for America.
Same with the some kind of flower. American poppies or whatever.
Well, California, we have the golden poppy.
That's right.
This is for the state, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was told, history says that Benjamin Franklin wanted to choose a different animal to symbolize the U.S. Did you know that?
Yes, it was a turkey.
The turkey.
I didn't know that.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, a turkey.
You thought a
I
turkey.
think that's why they chose the bald eagle.
I think the bald eagle was a little bit more regal.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
He had reasons though.
Oh,
I think
yes.
it was something about simple,
Thanksgiving,
practical.
maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it would have given a whole new twist to Thanksgiving, huh? Every year we just kill our symbol and eat it. Okay. Anyway, so that's the idea. These 4 beasts symbolize 4 nations. So a beast in prophecy is a symbol for a kingdom or a nation, okay? This prophecy mentions 4 world empires. We're going to see that these are world, dominating nations. These aren't just small little countries. These are world empires. So Daniel 7 speaks of 4 beasts, which are 4 world empires. Okay, let's put that idea on hold for a second. We've just really quickly an introduction to Daniel 7. Just put that on hold. We'll come back to it. Okay. A quick overview of the book of Daniel. I just wanted to give you this because I want you to know why we're going to the chapters we're going to. Why are you skipping these certain chapters? Really quickly here. Chapter 1 is a story. It's something that really happened. So when I use the word story, don't think I'm kind of downplaying it. It's historical account. Not like it's a made up story. So it's all true. It happened. Daniel 1 is a story, and it's the story about Daniel and his diet, and he refused to eat the unclean foods that the Babylonians gave him. Daniel chapter 2 is a prophecy. It's a prophecy of the statue. I don't know if you remember that from our other nights, right? Daniel chapter 3 is another story. The 3 Hebrew worthies forced to bow to the idol. I don't know if you remember that story. Right?
Yeah.
Daniel 4 is another story. The king of Babylon goes crazy for 7 years, and then his sanity is restored. I don't know if you know that story. Daniel 5 is the fall of Babylon. The king's great-grandson, Belshazzar, the kingdom is conquered. Daniel 6 is another story. It's Daniel in the lion's den. You've probably heard of that one. It's a famous story, right? Daniel 7 and Daniel 8 are both prophecies.
7 and 8
Both of them are prophecies. And really, actually, the rest of the book is prophecy.
Yeah, this is chapter 12.
Yeah, 10, 11, 9, 10, 11,
Prophecy
12.
of the end time.
They're all prophecies, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to skip the stories. You guys can read those on your own. They don't really require much interpretation. They're pretty straightforward and simple. The prophecies, that's where it helps to have a little bit of explanation. So what we're going to do today is we're going to look at chapters 2 and 7, these 2 prophecies. That's today, and we'll continue that next week. And then the following week, we're going to be in chapter 8. So that gives you an idea of what we're going to do, okay? So that's just a quick overview of the first 3/4 of the book of Daniel, and why we're going to look at these ones. So we're going to jump right into Daniel chapter 2.
Okay.
I'm not going to go through the detailed explanation of this. We did this last Saturday night. And so I won't go through all the details of the backstory. But just quickly, I'm going to point out what this vision was that the king of Babylon had. And this is Daniel speaking, telling the king what he saw in his dream. In your vision, this is verse 31, Daniel 2, verse 31. In your vision, your majesty, you saw standing before you a huge, shining statue of a man. Some Bibles say image. You'll use the word image.
Yeah.
Same idea, it's a statue. An idol. It really was an idol, And which is interesting to think about, because God gave this dream to the king of Babylon, who was a pagan. And so he used a symbol that the king was familiar with, an idol. Even though God doesn't like idol worship, he gave the king something that the king was familiar with.
Right.
An idol.
Met him where he was.
Met him where he was. Absolutely.
Where he was.
God is merciful. Yeah, absolutely. So it's a huge shining statue of a man. And now this statue is made of 4 main materials. It says the head of the statue is made of fine gold. Its chest and arms were of silver. Its belly and its thighs were bronze. And its legs were iron. But then when you get to the bottom, its feet were a combination of iron and mixed baby clay. Interesting, right? So we see 4 metals here. And then the last one broke it up. Okay. 4 metals. Head of gold, chest and arms of silver, belly and thighs of bronze, legs of iron. Okay. If that was the dream, now we will tell the king what it means. Now, before I go on to the meaning, does anything sound familiar here?
Sure does.
What sounds familiar to you?
Well, we were going through this, last week.
Well, you mean the interpretation, because
interpretations.
Yeah. But what about from what we've looked at already in Daniel 7?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
What's familiar?
Well, there's the 4.
For what?
The 4 nations.
4 nations, which are symbolized
and
by
the 4 beasts.
4 beasts, and now we have
The 4 metals.
Interesting, right?
Yes, it is. They all coincide.
I don't think this is a coincidence.
Coincidence.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fabulous.
So that was the dream. Do we need to guess what it means? No. The Bible says, now we will tell the king what it means. Verse 36. So he goes on and explains. Speaking to the king of Babylon, in verse 38, he says, you are this head of gold. So the king of Babylon, and by extension his kingdom, the Babylonian Empire, is the head of gold. And it's kind of just a map of where Babylon ruled and the time frame that it ruled from. Okay. It's fitting that it would be called the head of gold. Jeremiah calls it the golden city.
Golden City.
There is, I don't, you could take this account for how you want. I could give you guys more quotes from history, but there's one history book that says that Babylon was so adorned with gold that they said it seemed like there was more gold there than dust. Now, Babylon was a very elaborate, extravagant. They had, I think, 2 of the wonders of the world. You know, the 7 wonders of the world. They had, I think, 2 of them: the gates of Babylon and the hanging gardens of Babylon.
Gardens, yeah.
It was like the jewel of the world. It was a glorious kingdom, very spectacular. It makes sense that it would be symbolized by the head of gold, right? That was that symbol of, luxury, right?
Yes.
And Jeremiah calls it the golden city. So it makes sense that Babylon would be the head of gold. Next in verse 39, he says, after you shall arise another kingdom inferior to yours, just as silver is inferior to gold, right? Isn't that interesting? So we have a head of gold and chest of arms of silver, and the next kingdom that conquers Babylon is the Medo-Persian kingdom. And here's the dates, and there's a picture of it. And just so you can see that I didn't just make this up. I mean, this is history, but Daniel chapter 5 tells us. Remember we saw in the overview that Daniel 5 gives the fall of Babylon when it's conquered?
Yeah.
Well, you read the whole chapter and it's conquered by the Medo-Persian Empire.
Mm-hmm.
You guys have heard the phrase,
Combined.
the 2 combined.
With
Yeah,
the
like 2
arms.
arms. Exactly.
arms.
It was 2 kingdoms, the
They joined
Medes
together.
and the Persians joined together. Absolutely.
And they put it-
Absolutely. Isn't that interesting?
Then the Persians went.
And the Persians-
for the Medes.
Yeah, they ended up being stronger and they kind of conquered. Yeah. But you guys have heard the phrase, the writing on the wall?
Oh, yes.
That figure of speech? This is where it comes from, the book of Daniel. And there was this hand that appeared and it wrote on the wall these cryptic words. And then it tells you what the words mean. It means your kingdom has been divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. And then it tells you that night Babylon fell. And Darian the Mede took over. So at first, the ones who were stronger at first were the Medes, and then the Persians ended up taking up later. That's a key point in history. Okay? So, verse 39, Daniel chapter 2, then another, a third kingdom of bronze, and that's the Greek Empire. And I can show you pictures of the Greek armor, the helmets and the swords and the shields. They would use a lot of bronze.
It was the Bronze Age.
It was the Bronze Age.
Bronze Age.
Yeah, so it makes sense that Greece
Yeah.
would be symbolized
Mm-hmm.
by bronze. Okay? And then this is Daniel chapter 8, and we'll just look at this kind of quickly. It's another set of symbols, and we'll go into this more in depth in 2 weeks. It uses now 2 sacrificial animals instead of these lions and bears, predatory animals. These are sacrificial animals, a ram and a goat, to symbolize these 2 nations. And it says, the ram which you saw, having the 2 horns, they are the kings of Media and Persia. Again, it makes sense that the Medo-Persian Empire would be a goat with 2 horns, because it was 2 nations that joined together, like the 2 arms, right? And the male goat is the kingdom of Greece. So here you have the ram with the 2 horns that symbolize Medo-Persia, and then the Greece is the goat with 1 horn that conquers.
Yeah.
You read the story and it describes how that Greece conquers Medo-Persia. And so that's history as well. The Greek Empire conquered the Medo-Persian Empire. That's the 3rd empire. Oh, and here's pictures of the Greek armor, bronze. Pretty interesting, right? And that would be obviously the first great king of Greece, who is Alexander the Great. Alright. So, we've got 3. Babylon, the head of gold. Medo-Persia, chest and arms of silver. Greece is the belly and thighs of bronze. Who is the 4th empire?
Rome.
Rome. You don't have to know
Yeah.
much history to know who conquered Greece. It was Rome. And that's what the New Testament describes, is that 4th empire is Rome. It says, the 4th kingdom shall be as strong as iron. And Rome ruled from about 168 BC to about 476 AD. Okay. So we have 4 kingdoms in Daniel chapter 2. Right? 4 kingdoms. Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome. So which 4 kingdoms do you think the 4 beasts of Daniel 7 represent?
7 for
The Daniel chapter 7. Which 4 kingdoms do you think the 4 beasts of Daniel 7 represent?
The ones you just said?
The same 4 ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same 4. And what God does here is very common in teaching. I don't know if you guys can think back to your school days, grade school days, but you know, it's summertime right now, right? The kids get summertime off. And the beginning of the new school year, what is the first thing they do for the first week or so? You need to review. You guys already forgot.
Yeah.
It's been too long. They forgot everything over the summer, so they have to review, right? And then you enlarge, you build off of that.
Yeah.
And God knows, God's the original teacher, you know? Teachers nowadays just got that from him. So when Daniel 2, he gives the basic idea, 4 empires, and then in Daniel 7, he reviews it and then enlarges on that idea and gives more detail. But it's the same 4 world empires. I mean, think about it. How many worlds do we have? Right? Just one, right?
Yeah.
So if you're going to have 4 world empires, it's probably going to be the same 4. Yeah, probably. Okay. So, what we have here. Go ahead.
Real quick question.
Yes.
I'm wondering where, now with this, I see where this is laying with us,
Uh-huh.
but I think back of before Babylon,
Yes.
you had
Egypt and all.
Egypt.
Uh-huh.
Where was Egypt
In prophecy-wise,
in prophecy-wise, or was this just
it was in Genesis 18.
because of after that?
Yeah, because it's after. You know, why go through? Why go? Daniel was written long after Egypt had been
Right, exactly. It
kind of
was
the world
saving.
empire.
It's a-
Yeah. And so, but Abraham describes it in prophecy, right? God
Oh,
gave the
yes.
vision where he says your descendants will be in captivity for 400 years, right? So when he gives prophecies that are going to be, here's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But if it's like,
Egypt lasted a long time.
they did, yeah, absolutely,
really?
absolutely they did. And they were described in,
Through the
Genesis in
Roman
different
period.
ways, right, But now by the time we get to Daniel, this is 500 BC,
Right.
their heyday was they were still there and they're discussed,
Yeah.
but they definitely don't have their heyday anymore.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
This is an interesting point. So, if you look at Daniel 8, and we'll look at this in 2 weeks, you'll notice that we just saw that really quickly. It was a ram and a goat.
Yeah.
Right.
It only mentions those 2. It doesn't mention Babylon anymore, and it does mention Rome, but it doesn't mention Babylon anymore. The reason why is Daniel 8 is written like a couple years before Babylon's destroyed. So why predict? Why even discuss it? It just skips it.
That's right.
Isn't that
That's
interesting?
right, because Daniel was written
Well, Daniel,
basically.
the beginning of it was, the beginning of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, kind of the world empire stage of Babylon. But Daniel, by the time he got to the end of his life, he lived to see Medo-Persia conquer. And so Daniel 8 is written just a couple years before Medo-Persia conquers.
Yeah.
And so, seeing exactly here, if you look at Daniel 8, it'll tell you at the beginning of it what year, whose reign it was written under. Here it is, Daniel 8 verse 1. In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar. Belshazzar is the same guy from Daniel chapter 5 who is the last king of Babylon who's conquered. He's Nebuchadnezzar's grandson. So Daniel chapter 8 is written right at the end
Yeah.
of Babylon's reign. So Daniel doesn't even mention Babylon. He just goes right on and starts talking about Persia and Greece. Isn't that interesting? So that's why. So that's kind of a long way to answering your question, why is Egypt not mentioned? It's just,
Yeah.
we're going from here and we're moving on.
Right.
This is now looking, back. So
Yeah.
that's the idea. Okay, so here's these 4 empires again. I'm sure God has other reasons for this, but he for some reason he likes these 4 to just point out these 4. So we have Babylon's the head of gold, and it's compared in Daniel 7. The symbol is a lion with eagle's wings. In Daniel 2, it's the chest and arms of silver, is the Medo-Persian Empire. And in Daniel 7, it's the bear, raised up on one side with 3 ribs. In Daniel 2, we have the belly and thighs of bronze. That's the Greek Empire. And in Daniel 7, the beast is the leopard with 4 heads and 4 wings. And the 4th one, the legs of iron, is Rome, and that's symbolized by the terrible beast. He doesn't even describe it, compare it to an animal, but he says it has 10 horns. So these are the same 4 world empires. Now,
Greece, excuse me,
Go
I'm
ahead,
sorry.
go ahead.
Greece was what now? What is the leopard.
leopard with 4 heads,
Leopard with 4
4
heads. Okay.
wings. Yes. So we're going to go in detail now and show how these ideas line up.
Yeah.
How it makes sense that these are the same 4 world empires. I'm going to go into that detail now and show why that is. Okay, here we go. Daniel chapter 2, verse 38, he calls Babylon the head of gold. Notice it's the most royal, kind of extravagant, the gold head, right?
Right.
The beast that corresponds with this is the king of the beasts, the lion, which we think of as the most of the royal, and the lion isn't the strongest of all the beasts out there. You could argue there's some bears who could probably beat it, but the lion's more
It's
beautiful. It's
regal.
Regal, absolutely. And so it makes sense that the head of gold and the lion kind of symbolize Babylon, that kind of jewel of the world Babylon was. So, but look at the details of it also. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I watched till its wings were plucked off. This is Daniel 7 verse 4. And it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and a man's heart was given to it. Okay, you have this lion with eagle's wings. The wings are plucked off, and then it's lifted and made to stand and given a man's heart. Right? Okay. Have you guys read the story of Daniel chapter 4 of the king of Babylon when he goes crazy? Do you remember that story
I
at all?
do. I
Vaguely?
remember it vaguely, yes.
The story is Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, he got proud one day. God had already told him there's going to be 4 empires. After you is going to be another empire, right? But he looks at his kingdom and he's, look at this Babylon that I have built, and, may it last forever, right? And God tells him, because you're proud,
Yes.
I'm going to humble you for 7 years. And he makes the king go crazy. And he roams in the field like a beast. And he eats grass. And it says his hair became matted like eagle's feathers. And his nails grew out like talons.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Very interesting, right?
Now I remember.
Now you remember?
Yeah.
And before that happens, it gives him a symbol. And Daniel interprets the symbol for him. The symbol was a tree. And it's this huge tree, and all the birds from all over the world live in it and eat its fruit and are protected by it.
Yeah.
And then the tree is cut down, but the root is left. And the branches are plucked off, but the stump is left. And then after 7 years, the tree is restored. And Daniel tells the king what this symbolizes is that you're going to, basically become crazy and be like a beast for 7 years. But after that, God will restore your kingdom to you. And so what happens is it uses this language, the branches are plucked off. Does that sound similar to these wings being plucked off, right?
Yes.
After 7 years, it says that this king who had been, it describes him as like an eagle. His hair and his talon, his nails grew out like talons. He's eating straw like an ox. He's crazy. After 7 years, it says that he's made to stand up again, and he's given his heart, the man's heart is given back to him. Very similar language to this lion with eagle's wings, right? Very similar. And so that's the idea. This lion with eagle's wings. It's given this same kind of process that the king of Babylon goes through, because it's trying to say, hey, this is similar to the king.
Isn't that something, again, 7 years
7 years.
completion?
Yeah.
7 years of completion. That
God
number
likes number
7
7.
all the way through. Yeah, it's really something.
God likes the number 7.
Amen.
And it doesn't. You know what's interesting is it doesn't use the word 7 years. It says 7 times.
7 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the
Still.
interpretation, that's a year.
Yeah.
And so when prophecy, where it says a time, times, and half a time, that's talking about years.
Years.
Yeah.
That's right.
Here's the other thing that's interesting. So it's a lion with eagle's wings. Check this out.
Ooh.
Did you know that a lion with eagle's wings was the symbol of Babylon?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is from the Ishtar Gate.
Right.
This is they kind of fixed it up of the Ishtar Gate of Babylon. And you can see it there. It's a lion with eagle's wings. That was their symbol. They had lions with eagle's wings all over the gates of Babylon.
I've seen another one where they had it, where the wings were more pronounced.
And it's
like
up.
It was, like it's up.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you seen that as
Yeah.
well?
There was a bunch of images I could have picked from.
Yeah,
I just-
but that's cool.
I thought this one was
That's cool. I like that.
Yeah, yeah. You look it up when you guys get home. Google it.
Yeah.
Lion with eagle's wings, Babylon, and there's tons of pictures of these images.
Yeah.
So God used the symbol that they used for themselves, a lion with eagle's wings, to symbolize Babylon. So I don't think there's any doubt this first empire is the same as the head of gold. It's Babylon. Okay? Move on. Beast number 2. This is where it starts getting really obvious. And suddenly another beast, a second like a bear. It was raised up on one side. Now the artist's depiction here has this bear standing up, but that doesn't make sense because that's not, if it wanted to describe a bear standing on its hind legs, it would say the way it did of the previous one where it says it stood up like a man. But this one says it's raised up on one side. That's, to me, it's describing it's lopsided like this. You know what I mean?
Yes.
A bear on 4 legs and it's to its side. One side is higher than the other.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that sound like the Medo-Persian Empire, which was 2,
Was
but
the
one
2.
was stronger than
One
the
was
other?
stronger than the other.
Like the 2 arms, right?
Yes.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it is.
One is higher than the other. It was raised up on one side. It had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. Notice that.
3 ribs.
3 ribs.
That's what I was wondering what that
What was in his mouth?
Yeah, is that whiskers or?
Yeah, bloody whiskers. Oh, it has 3 ribs. And they said thus to it, arise, devour much
Well,
flesh.
it kind of makes sense when it says raised up on one side. It could be the front side or the back side.
Or a left or right side.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? Well, notice this. Okay, so compare that, raised up on one side with 3 ribs. Compare that now to Daniel chapter 8. This ram that we saw with the 2 horns. Then I lifted up my eyes and saw a ram which had 2 horns, and the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other. Does that sound familiar as the bear raised up on one side? One side's higher than the other. Isn't that interesting?
Interesting. Wow.
Notice this. But the one side was higher than the other, and the higher one came up last. So you have 2 horns. The one that ends up being the highest is the one that comes up last.
Right.
That's exactly what happened in history. First it was the Medes,
Medes.
and then the Persians came up, and now we don't even call it the Medo-Persian. Now it's just the Persian Empire. And so the one who ended up being the higher, the more powerful, it rose after. It rose to prominence last. Detailed prophecy. That's history. Okay? So the higher one came up last. Now notice this. I saw the ram pushing westward, northward, and southward. It pushes in 3 different directions. This is a very simple symbol that this Medo-Persian Empire had to conquer 3 smaller empires to become the world power. Westward, northward, and southward. It conquered, I believe it was Egypt, Libya, and Babylon. From its place, it had to push toward the west, toward the east, and toward the south. And so those three kind of smaller kingdoms to become the world empire. So three directions, westward, eastward, and southward. The bear has how many ribs?
3.
3 ribs. Obviously, a beast symbolizes a nation, so it's got 3 ribs. It's got the remainders of 3 different meals in its mouth. It conquered 3 smaller nations. Does that make sense? It's very simple. Do you see the parallels between the bear and the ram?
Oh, yes.
It's becoming pretty obvious that this is Medo-Persia. Interesting, right? The rams, which you saw, having the 2 horns, are the kings of Media and Persia. So we know that. It tells us flat out. And we
Yeah.
see the parallels between the bear and the ram. It's pretty obvious. Interesting, right?
Yes.
Okay, so let's move on to the third one.
Okay.
After this I looked, and there was another, like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. Daniel 7, verse 6. Now here it is in Daniel 8. Therefore the male grew very great, and when it became great, the large horn was broken. So this one, first it just has 4 horns. First it just has 1 notable large horn. And in place of it, 4 notable ones came up toward the 4 winds of heaven. The male goat is the kingdom of Greece. The very large horn that is between its eyes is the first king. As for the broken horn and the 4 that stood up in its place, 4 kingdoms shall arise out of that nation, but not with its power. So this he-goat starts off with 1 horn, that first great king. Who was the first great king of Greece? Alexander the Great, right? And it says when he became strong, he was broken. That's exactly what happened in history. Just after Alexander conquered the civilized world, he became the world empire. Shortly thereafter, he died at a very young age, 32, 33,
30s,
yeah, early 30s. He had conquered the known world by about, late 20s, early 30s, 31 at the latest, he had conquered, right? And he was dead by 33. So when he became strong, he was broken. What happened after he died?
They tried all of these battles and everything like that, these leaders and stuff like that, they
fought over it, right?
fought over everything, and it,
Here's the history. This is very interesting. Okay. First king, broken when he was great. 4 kings come after him. Alexander conquered the world by age 31. He died at 33. His son was not old enough to be the heir. He was like 4 or something. He was a little kid. So here it is. This is from Ancient History Encyclopedia. It says, when he was asked who should succeed him, this is on his deathbed, Alexander said the strongest, which answer led to his empire being divided between 4 of his generals. Here's their names: Cassander, Ptolemy, Antigonus, and Seleucidas, known as the Diadochi, or the successors.
Yeah. Some of
So-
those names are hard to pronounce.
Yeah, they are. These are old ancient Greek names. So, now let's go back to the prophecy. Think about it. It said this one will be broken up. After this first horn became great, he would be broken, and 4 horns would stand up in his place. His empire was divided into 4 parts.
Yeah.
4 parts, yes.
Perfect. It's
Yeah.
exactly what prophecy said. There would be one great king that everyone knows about, and right when he was strong, he's broken, and it's broken up into 4. His empire is broken into 4 parts.
Wow, that is so cool.
Now,
That is so
how does this relate to the leopard with 4 heads
4 heads.
and 4 wings? Do you guys see the parallels?
Mhm.
That's Greece. It's divided up into 4 parts. It's exactly the same idea. So the 4 heads. His empire broken up into 4 parts. This is just history. Pretty interesting, right?
Yeah.
I don't think this is a coincidence that the ram and the goat are mentioned like that. So, here's the first 3 again. Babylon, lion with eagle's wings, head of gold. Persia, Medo-Persian Empire. The bear with 3 ribs raised up on one side, and the chest and arms of silver. Greece, the leopard with 4 heads, and the belly and thighs of bronze. And then the last one's Rome. Now I want you guys to notice this. Rome, the 4th one, we'll see the verse on this, but it says the 4th one's divided into the feet of iron and clay, the feet and toes of iron and clay.
Okay.
And then this 4th one has 10 horns. Now, how many toes?
10.
10 toes, 10 horns.
Yeah.
You guys see the similarities?
Mhm.
All right, let's look at this.
So that kind of combines into each other.
Yes.
From the legs of iron to the feet of iron and.
Yeah,
Iron
yeah,
and
yeah,
clay.
yeah.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
Exactly. It's just Rome divided.
Yes.
Exactly.
Okay. Rome.
The 4th kingdom shall be as strong as iron. That's Daniel 2, verse 40. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, this is Daniel 7 now, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth.
Yeah.
So it was legs of iron, that was the 4th empire. Now the 4th beast has iron teeth.
Teeth.
I mean, God's showing these parallels, they're
Yeah.
obvious. It's the same 4 world empires. It devoured and brake in pieces, stamped the residue with the feet of it, has feet, stamped them with the feet. It was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. It's the same 4th world empire, and these 10 horns and the 10 toes symbolize, in Daniel chapter 2, verse 43, it says, the kingdom shall be divided. So the 4th empire is not conquered by a 5th, it's divided up into 10 pieces. That's how it works. Here is an artist's depiction of the Western Roman Empire. I mean, it's not
Yes.
perfectly like that, but that's
It
basics.
says that also that there was a little horn coming up from among them,
Yes.
formed from 3 of the first horns, and those destroyed
Those are the 3.
that were plucked out of the roots.
Those are the 3, yeah. And next week, we're going to spend the entire class on the little horn.
Wow.
Next week is all the little horn. So I'm just setting up the stage for next week.
Yeah.
So these are the 10 divisions. And, some people there were smaller little tribes.
Yeah.
But what we're looking at is it has to fit the prophecy of 10 that were all standing at the same time, all when Rome fell. And Rome fell around 476 AD, and these were the basic 10 divisions. And that really, most of them exist in some form still today. The Visigoths were Spain, the Franks was France, the Alemannians is Germany, the Sueves, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, Portugal, the Anglo-Saxons, the English, Lombards is Italy, the Burgundians is Switzerland, and then these last 3, the Ostrogoths, the Heruli, and the Vandals, those 3 were destroyed. And it says the little horn plucks them up, and we'll talk about that next week.
That, where you were having that Zouaves?
Yeah, how do you...
Zouaves.
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 Zouaves, okay.
It was during the Civil War, okay, a lot of the way that the soldiers would dress,
Yeah.
also in France, also
Uh-huh.
came from that, and they were called the French Zouaves. And it's
Interesting.
how that they dressed
It was a style.
flamboyantly with the red pantaloons and the red hats and stuff like that. They were
It was
really
style, huh?
outrageous.
Is that where we get the word suave from?
Zouaves.
So when you
That's
say,
where that
so nowadays when you
derived
say, hey,
from.
you look suave?
Well, I don't know, it very well could be,
It
because you look
probably is.
suave, because
Yeah.
it was real flamboyant
Ah.
dressing.
I'm gonna look into that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
bet
yeah,
you it
look it
is.
up, and of course, what we call flamboyant dressing and stuff
Mhm.
like that
Mhm.
really came about later also in the Second World War of the, what do they call them, not the beatniks, but the flamboyant dress, help me out here.
Second
It was
World
the
War.
Mexicans dressed,
Oh.
you know what I'm talking about. What's the name I'm trying to think of?
Second World War you're talking about?
Second World War, yeah, right in the San Diego area and all that kind of stuff. You know what I'm talking about. They had the chains.
Yeah,
and,
now I can't think of the
uh,
word. With the striped pants.
Yeah,
I know what you're talking
very,
about.
that meant flamboyant dress.
It's gonna come to me. It'll come to me.
Yeah,
Oh man, that's annoying. I can't remember the word.
it's
now.
right on the tip of my tongue.
Yes.
I can't get it.
I know what you're
But
talking about.
Zouaves, that's a very
Yeah.
good point, because I never really thought of it that way.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
when you
yeah.
said you look very suave,
Yeah,
Well, that was very, very typical, because it was very
how they
flamboyant dressed.
go. I'll look that up after, that's gonna bug me out.
And they made great
The-
targets.
Yeah,
Yes.
well,
Yeah.
yeah, hey, look at me.
All that lasted really was maybe up till 1863, and then the rest of the war,
They said forget
they
that.
started going into regular
Regular clothes.
uniforms. Yeah.
I hear you.
So
I'm sorry to get off the
big-
thing.
That's
Party
okay, that's
days,
okay. Interesting history.
Yeah.
But you guys get the idea, right?
Yes.
Rome divided up into 10
Yeah.
parts, 10 basic parts there. That's the idea. Okay, so what happens next after Rome? Because now we're talking about the fall of Rome. This is 476 AD, about, that Rome fell and divided up into 10 parts. That was like 1500 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So what happens between then and today? Yeah, come back next week.
What?
So,
Quick question here again.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Now, going back to that last one. Can
Yeah,
you
yeah,
go
yeah.
back?
This one?
Okay, yeah, right there.
Yes,
Okay, you go to 476 AD when
Rome divided up.
the
It's
Roman Empire
the
basically.
Roman Empire's crown.
Was Charlemagne,
That's after.
this is after
That's much after.
that.
Yes. That's the
Okay.
Holy Roman Empire was him trying to reunite.
Okay,
This
so that
divided
wasn't yet. Okay,
era.
476 was
Yeah.
really basically the end of the Roman.
Yep.
Roman
Into the
Empire,
Caesars.
The royal.
Yeah, no more Caesars.
Okay.
Yeah, the royal
Right,
empire
that was
kind of
that.
crumbled
Okay,
from being attacked from all different
Okay.
sides, and it just broke into pieces.
so Constantinople, Opal and all that is not yet.
No, Constantine was
Constantine,
three.
that's the one I was talking about.
He was in the 300s, so that's before. So, you know, the Roman Empire, there's the Western and the Eastern Empire, and it's split.
Okay,
and
that's what I was talking
He
about,
made the
right.
new capital in
Constantine, so
in the East.
that was,
That's before that.
okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that
yeah.
was-
So we're talking mostly about the Western Roman Empire. And what you'll notice in prophecy, and a lot of people will say, hey, what about China over here? And, you know, these kind of things. Really, prophecy is not, it's not worried about things that don't pertain to where the mass of God's people is at the time. And so the question is, where are the Christians? In the Old Testament, the question was, where's Israel?
Yeah.
In the New Testament, it's where's the Christians? And so this Western Roman Empire is what's focused on here because that's where the majority of Christendom is. And so that's really the focus. And so
Okay.
the Eastern Roman Empire doesn't really even get much attention.
Can you
Nor
move
does
that up there
China.
for just a second?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll give you the slides too. So, and we'll kind of close with this, but if you guys look at Daniel 7, so we looked at a quick overview of Daniel 2 and 7 today.
Yeah.
Really quick, but that's the idea. When you look at Daniel 7, you notice that there's the 4 beasts,
Yeah.
but then there's the little horn, right? And if you just look at how many verses and how much words go to each one, the 4 beasts only get a little bit of time. The little horn gets a lot of words in that chapter. Now, we're going to spend all next week focused on the little horn. But would it make sense that God would go, and I'll come back to this, he would go from Daniel's day, which is about 500 BC, and he goes one empire, next empire, and he's basically covering the main stuff from then till about the middle of the next millennium, right? 476 AD. Does it make sense that he would leave a 1500-year gap there and just not describe what happens next? No. So he's going to cover what's the main thing that happened after the fall of Rome, from then until now, where we think we're in the last days. What's the big thing that happened next? That's the little horn. And that's what we're going to focus on next
So,
week.
in the beginning of this lesson, when you were saying about the Revelations,
Yes.
is that kind of the same as this? I mean, it is the same, but the order.
The order?
Yeah, because
Oh, I didn't mention I said I would talk about the order.
Yeah.
How they're mentioned in opposite order.
yeah.
Okay, let me describe that. Okay. So, Daniel, he's living when? What was the empire that was there when he first starts writing his book?
That was Babylon.
Babylon,
Yeah.
right? Daniel says he sees in his vision in this order. The lion with eagle's wings. Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome. Daniel's living in the time of Babylon. He's looking into the future, right? Who wrote the book of Revelation?
John.
John. Which empire was in power when John was writing?
Rome.
Rome.
Oh.
John now is living in the time of the beast with 10 horns, which is Rome,
Yeah.
and he's looking back in past
Okay.
and saying Rome, Greece, Medo-Persia, Babylon.
Yeah.
He mentions them in the opposite order because he's
Oh,
catching you up
okay.
and saying,
That makes sense.
I'm viewing it from here, looking back,
Looking back.
opposite order,
Okay.
but the same 4 beasts. Isn't that interesting?
Cool.
And he takes 4 beasts and he puts them into one, which is interesting because each one of these world empires, when it's conquered by the next one, they always adopt
Yeah, some of their, yeah.
some of their ideas, even their gods. You guys, they call it Greco-Roman because it's like these two just kind of merge.
Yeah.
The same gods, just new names. And so each world empire just takes on the characteristics of the previous one. So by the time you get to Rome, John says it's one beast that's like a combination of all 4. Isn't that interesting?
Yes.
It's a beautiful way of describing history,
Wow.
but that's prophecy. So,
That's cool.
leave that up for you.
Yeah, leave it
I'll
there
give you
for
the
just
slide.
a
I'll
second,
bring it back.
Chad.
Okay,
From the bathroom.
no problem. So we'll close now. I kept you guys a little late.
Okay.
Oh no, this